Okay, hello and welcome to our first ever First Bank Circuit webinar on growing your business through social media. I'm Kim Reed and I will be your facilitator. Before we get started, allow me to cover just a couple of quick logistics. The lines are muted, phone lines are muted, but at any time you are welcome to send us your questions through the webinar tool, and we will address those at the end of today's presentation. Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. We're fortunate to have two knowledgeable presenters who are ready to share a lot of great information with you. And finally, a quick disclaimer. The opinions expressed in the presentations are statements of the speaker's opinions, are intended only for informational purposes, and are not necessarily the opinions of First Bank. All right, and with that, we are ready to dive in. So at this time, I have the pleasure of turning it over to our host for today's session, Carla Jackson.
Thank you for that introduction, Kim. I'm excited to be the host for the first event in the program, the new program that's been dedicated to women business owners. Before we get started with our guest speakers, I am pleased to welcome our CEO for a few opening remarks talking about this new program.
Good afternoon. I'm Shelley Seifert, Chairman and CEO of First Bank, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to our inaugural First Bank Circuit event. We're excited to launch this financial empowerment program designed especially for women business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives. Our goal is to develop a network that helps women business leaders build relationships with those facing similar challenges and opportunities. We named this group the Circuit to represent the energy and electricity that's created when like-minded, business-savvy women get together. And frankly, I can't wait to see that energy in action. I'd like to thank Carla Jackson and Trish Turner from our wealth management team for their leadership in developing this program and their passion for helping women succeed. And I'd like to thank our two very special guests today, Lisa Hugh and Brahman Ritchie. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise on a topic that's so important to all of us as we look for ways to grow our brands and our businesses. I hope you enjoy today's program, and I look forward to seeing you at future First Bank Circuit events.
Thank you, Shelley, for that kickoff. And now to our first speaker. Lisa Hu is the founder and CEO of Lux & Nix. At Lux & Nix, they design luxury, eco-friendly, functional handbags for the modern woman who are working on their careers and are trying to make a difference in the world. After spending over a decade in the corporate finance world and then launching her own business, Lisa understands the needs of the on-the-go female. Lisa is passionate about designing products that help women do more and achieve more through innovative and functional designs. And in January of 2019, one of Lisa's handbags was selected to be included in the swag bags for the Screen Actors Guild Awards. How exciting is that? Thank you, Lisa, for joining us today. And if we could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you've grown Lux & Nix to the brand it is today?
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much, Carla, for that introduction. I'm Lisa Hu. I'm the founder of Lux & Nix. And yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of jump into who we are today. So it's a direct-to-consumer brand, and we sell awesome handbags and then equip rockstar women with what they need for their careers. And we've actually gotten some national exposure, as Carla mentioned. You know, we've been in the Screen Actor Guild Award. We've been on Forbes, Marie Claire. And I'm saying some of these, not because I want to boast, but because I kind of want to talk to you guys about where we were just 3 years ago and how far we've come. Next slide, please. And just 3 years ago, I was in corporate. I was a corporate finance director and I absolutely knew nothing about creating products, nor did I know anything about marketing and getting the name out there. So all the accomplishments you guys saw in the last slide took a lot of effort. Basically, we went from 0 to hero, but it was through a lot of hard work and some of the really keen lessons that I've learned throughout this entire process, and I want to share some of that with you guys today. And especially now, this year, given the circumstances of the year, it's more important than ever to have that kind of cognizant around what social media is, and also, more importantly, how you show up on social media across the board. So it's all about how you show up. It doesn't matter whether it's offline or online. So our products do sell offline, and we do have a presence online. So this year in particular, we're very, very focused on our online presence. However, that being said, how you talk to your customers in person and how you talk to them online should be very fluid, and you have to keep a very consistent communication. But that is with a caveat, it has to be native to the platform that you're on. So next slide. So there's 3 types of media that we're going to kind of cover, and what I want to do is give you guys actual examples of what we've done and kind of just go through and talk about it one by one. So there's 3 types: earned media, owned media, and paid media. Earned and owned can be not paid for. So what I mean by that is it can be in-house with the efforts of your own. And then, of course, we'll talk about paid media as well, but all 3 of these play into each other. So next slide. So earned media, we kind of talked a little bit about, okay, the national publications that we got into. Also, recently I did a campaign about like designing a whole line with the input of 5,000 different women. And as a result of that, we were able to get a TV spot, local TV spot. We were also able to get an influencer-esque person, which is Sonia Morgan. She's the Real Housewives of New York. All these that we have displayed here are through the efforts of in-house. And, you know, it was just a simple outreach effort of like sending a message to Sonia Morgan through Instagram or DM, but being really genuine and authentic about it and saying like, hey, look, this is who we are. This is what we're about. We see you're, you know, a big career woman, you know, and would you like to do a review of our product? And I just wrote out the storyline, everything like that. As simple as that, just being genuine and authentic can get an influencer like Sonia, but we'll play a short clip just to show you guys. She actually talked about the brand because that was something that we mentioned via a communication towards her.
So I'm going to introduce you to this really cool backpack, and in general a great company by this go-getter woman who was in finance, and she went off on her own and basically, like myself, started over. It's very powerful and luxe. It's called, in fact.
So that was just a short clip. I wanted to give you guys a flavor of that, and we'll talk a little bit more about getting something that's as simple as a video on your camera and the paid media. It all kind of interrelates, as well as like the earned media you get from like Business Insider. We did the same thing, which is like we reached out to somebody else that wrote about handbags, and we said, hey, would you like to do a review about us? Here are some key features, and here's a brand story. And you know, it's that genuine, authentic connection that you have with people that ultimately gets them to say yes to an earned media spot. So we'll flip to the next one. Okay, so owned media. Owned media is things like what you generally think of as social media. So the Facebook of the world, the Instagram of the world, and also including your email as well as your authentic blogs that you guys have on your platform. So anything that you guys physically own. So in our situation, what we were talking about earlier, which is like, how do you show up with to your customers? And in our case, we believe in having genuine and authentic conversations, and it's really reflected in our emails channel, which beyond just like the social media, our email channel is one of the just like the highest conversion channel, just because in that channel you get to have these like one-on-one conversations with people, and people will often respond back to the email. So instead of the typical newsletter that you see for a lot of brands, what we do is we actually just have a conversation and be like, hey, hi friend, we just launched this product. This is how we design it, and this is kind of the background story. And just touching base a little bit on the social media side, where it relating to like Facebook and Instagram. In fact, you know, most people think you have to be everywhere. So that's a misconception that I was told in the very beginning too, which is I created all these different hashtags and accounts on all the different social media platforms. But what I found to be really effective is figuring out, where do your customers actually live? So and knowing that, or where do they actually peruse through the information, and knowing that, that's when you can back into and determining like, where should you actually focus your efforts. So surprisingly for us, as a brand for the working career woman, our channel that works really well, our social media channel, is actually LinkedIn, which is really surprising. Just considering the fact that most brands live on Instagram and Facebook. We do have some presence there as well, but sometimes if I had to choose a preferred channel, I would choose LinkedIn. And it's not to say that that's the right one for you, but you just have to understand where your customer is coming from, where you're getting the conversions from, and then you could back into, okay, this is where I should focus my energy on, because we're all very, very limited in time, as everyone here knows. So next one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about paid media and how this kind of plays off of the first two that are in-house. So from a paid media perspective, we've gotten some of these like UGCs, like what you saw earlier, in terms of getting videos from customers, influencers, and then actually utilizing that as part of our paid media strategy. Going back to being consistent in how you show up. For us, showing up is having a conversation with people and treating them like a person versus a transaction that's on a social media platform versus just a sale. We love, love, love having those kind of one-on-one conversations. So what we do is we actually have our, have like customers send us videos and just say like, hey, could you just please take a video of yourself telling us about how you love about the bag, what you love about the bag, and anything that you want to talk about. And it's effective in that it's very native to like a paid ads platform like Facebook, and it works very well for us. So I'm going to play one of our very most effective ads right now, so that way you guys can kind of check it out and get a feel for it.
Hey guys, I wanted to tell you about my new Lux & Nix fan bag. So this bag is amazing. I love it. It's so versatile, and it also has multiple ways that you can put straps on it too.
So as you guys can see, that was a very simple video that was just done on one of our customers' phones. And the music and, of course, the caption, we added that in post-production. But from a video perspective, it was just literally like, hey, Jessica, can you please just send us a video and just tell us what you do with the bag? And we got that back and we edited it. And it was, for a lot of people that want to, create these ads to run on Facebook, it's just to tell you like, hey, you don't necessarily need to spend a ton on creating a beautiful edited video. For something like Facebook, where the native language there is for people to have a conversation, it works really well for just user-generated content where it's like on a phone. It looks very, very native to that channel. So, okay, let's flip to the next one. Okay, so kind of just to summarize this, you absolutely don't need to be everywhere. I know sometimes people can feel very overwhelmed with how much information there is for social media. The key is to just focus your efforts and budgets in terms of what works for you. And with social media, just imagine it as having a conversation, but you have to understand, where does your customer live? Or how do they how do they want to have a conversation with you? What channels work for you? And a lot of the ways to figure what channels work for you is to figure out, okay, what is the data behind this? Where are you getting some of your customer conversions? One of the reasons we knew that LinkedIn worked for us was because we saw customers come through LinkedIn in our analytics and purchased at a higher rate than on Instagram. So those are kind of the ways. So just always remember kind of those points when you're going to social media. You don't have to spread your efforts, just focus. Next one, please. Okay, and that's it. I just want to say thank you guys so much for listening. And you know, we're LuxaNix, and if you or your friend ever needs an awesome bag to keep up with you and just keep you organized, definitely check us out at luxanix.com. And if you guys have any questions after that, let me know.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for your insight on your journey. And for those who are watching here today, we want to make sure that we help you build an effective social media strategy. And so our next guest speaker is Brahman Ritchie, and she is a communications and marketing expert. Brahman works as a senior strategist for Rogers Townsend, and her clients include AT&T Business, Smoothie King, Ezra Brooks, and Dreamfields Pasta. Bronwyn's focus is to bolster the economic and cultural vitality of communities through unconventional channels. She's actively involved and is always eager to volunteer her time to local St. Louis charities and organizations. Thank you, Bronwyn, for joining us today.
Oh gosh, Carla, thank you so much for having me. And thank you to Lisa for sharing your super inspiring and energizing story. It was really fantastic to listen to. Actually, if we could go to the next slide already, enough about me in that context. So I am not a small business owner myself, but I was raised by one, which was a fabulous experience that I'm incredibly grateful for. My single mother ran a trend forecasting business that survived and put me through college up until the 2008 recession. But Lisa and I hopped on the phone to start planning what we wanted to talk about, and one of the things that jumped out at me, having been raised by a small business owner, was when Lisa said, you can't be everywhere all the time to everyone. And I remember seeing my mom trying to juggle raising me while also juggling her clients and the operations of her business and the marketing and all of those things all at once. And how much pressure that put on her as a woman and as a business owner. Ultimately, what she ended up doing was seeking assistance in the form of her daughter. So my first ever marketing gig was actually writing blogs and promotional materials for my mom. So the thing that I wanted to share with you all today, if you want to bump to the next slide, is combining that experience that I had helping my mom out back in the day and seeing what works for her with where I am now, working for these huge brands with these huge budgets, with all these best practices, how to bring that down from up in the clouds to something actually practical and actionable here today. Next slide. So before we get started, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the very basic things that we're talking about and some best practices for being online. Next slide. Yeah. So I think kind of a misconception, and again in this space of like you have to be everywhere all the time. There's one really important spot online, and that is where your transactions occur. So if that's your website, it could be through an Instagram page, it could be your Etsy page. It's essentially your online digital shop or office where where people can make that purchase from you. Everything else that you do should point to that destination. And it's all a coordinated effort to get those real humans, as Lisa reminded us, to your point of purchase so that you can then grow your revenue. We can actually pop over to the next slide already. So some of y'all may have seen this funnel here before, but with that ecosystem of all those different places that you can spend time and energy driving people to your point of sale, they align with this marketing conversion funnel, where there's awareness at the top, which is all about getting new people just aware that you exist, and then pulling them downwards using that ecosystem of channels to finally make that purchase, that point of sale. Looking at all of the great things that were in that ecosystem, stuff like Google search, email, print advertising, social media is the one that kind of runs the gambit from awareness to consideration to conversion, and also can be the cheapest to execute against. So that's where we're going to focus our attentions here today. And I did just want to offer one pro tip when it comes to general digital hygiene. So I would recommend getting onto your computer, opening a private browser and searching your business name, and then seeing what pops up in that anonymized private browser with regards to your business. And the first thing you want to look for there is all the information correct. Does it have your business hours? Does it have the right way to get in contact with you? Because that'll be at the very basic level, the first barrier to a customer making that purchase or finding you online. So if your awareness level, social media driving you to the site is working, then you want to make sure all the information is correct. Your second step is to put yourself in your customer's shoes and see if what is being represented there is something that aligns with what you're trying to put out in the world. So that's just kind of a first step, but we can keep moving from there. Great, so within that entire ecosystem of things, within your website, with your sales funnel, it seems like a whole lot of stuff and a lot to chew on, bite off, and actually execute against. The key is prioritization. I'm going to help you do that right now on the next slide. All right, so again, seems like a whole lot of information. The key to not being everywhere for everyone is to actually listen to your customers. So a recommended exercise that I would have for you all is to sit down with a piece of paper and write out your profile of what an ideal customer is. What are their actions and behaviors? Where do they spend their time? How they need you the most? And possibly some demographic information. So that's what this represents, is demographic information: age, gender, location, income levels, types of things that they like to see online, all assigned to individual platforms. So if you look at this piece of paper that you've put out in this outline of your ideal customer, you might see that it matches up with a specific channel. For example, if you're marketing to women who are on the go and career-minded, that LinkedIn space is going to be ideal given the way people use the LinkedIn platform. Pinterest, also women-forward platform, so if your target is predominantly women, that might be the best place to spend your time. So from here, you can pick your priority platform and devote your attention to that, kind of making the entire digital marketing puzzle more manageable. So we went from all these channels to social media, and then all these platforms to maybe just one or two that really work for you. Which brings us to the next point, which is, what do you put on those platforms? I think as women, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome in a lot of things that we do. The first reminder, and I'm actually stealing this from Barbara Cochran from Shark Tank, is that if you have made it to this point, if you own a business, you have had experiences and are putting things out there that people want to buy and want to see, and they want to hear from you. So that is thing number one, is have faith in whatever you're going to put onto these social platforms. Your ideal customer wants to hear from you, and they want to see that social media content. In fact, the way that some of that targeting works on the advertising side, those folks are already opting in to be seeing content like yours from businesses like yours. Then there's the idea of the content strategy, which sounds really intimidating, but all it is developing a calendar to keep yourself accountable to creating content on a regular basis for your chosen platform. So my only other thing to remind you of here would be, as you're creating that content, to keep in mind, first of all, that fluid, consistent messaging for your business, who you are, should be the same offline as it is online, but also back up to our funnel, that whatever you're making should align back to your business goals. You don't just have to make stuff for the sake of making stuff. Don't overload your calendar because you're trying to keep up with some sort of cadence. Make sure that you're purposefully creating things in a way that aligns with what you're trying to achieve. Which brings me to our next point. The way that then you're going to figure out whether or not the place that you've chosen to be in social media and the types of content that you're creating based off of that intersection of who you are and who your target customer is to measure your results over time. There's a lot of trial and error in this, and so it is okay to keep track of your numbers, which all of these social platforms want you to be logging in and looking at this data and keeping track of these numbers to see what works and what doesn't work, and then invest more of your super valuable time in the spots that are performing the best for you. So let's look on the next slide at some of the numbers that will be most valuable to judging your results. So if you're focused on getting new customers and growing that awareness, things that you will want to check in on, because there are a lot of metrics in these social media platforms on the back end. Look at reach, look at impressions, look at views of videos. If those numbers are higher, then that means that the content itself is performing well. This goes for both organic social media and paid social media. If your goal is to pull those people down the funnel by educating the big wide net of folks more about your brand, you want to look at things like engagements and engagement rate. And those will tell you if people are liking what they're seeing. If your goal is to convert social traffic to a sale at whatever your digital property is, look at clicks and click-through rate, because that'll tell you if people said, yes, this is me, this is for me, I am now ready to go make a purchase from this business. On to the next. So looping back around to the beginning, I know that it can sometimes be easy, or I guess a little scary, but then once you get over that hump, to start something new, particularly when it comes to finding a new social media platform and just, okay, I'll post a thing here or there and, you know, I'll give it a shot. What's most important is the consistency and the ability to execute on this long term, which has to do with maintenance. We can go to the next slide. The true key to maintenance with a social media strategy is not burning yourself out on it. So believing in what you're putting out, like making sure that messaging is aligning with what you're trying to do with your business, believing in that, and having faith that investing your energy in this effort is worth your time, but then measuring that to find efficiencies where you can scale back your time investment on things that don't work as well, versus ramping up your time investment on things that do work well. I also want to empower you to prioritize the things that feed your joy in terms of creating content. So if whipping out your video camera to film a customer, let's say in store, or after having a positive exchange with your service or consultative practice, if that makes you really uncomfortable, then try for written posts instead. You are not beholden to best practices, aside from the ones I'm giving you, if they are killing you to bend over backwards to execute against them. I think one of the great things that came from our early run-throughs was the comment that Lisa, through all of her hard work, feels like she is everywhere all the time. She told you herself that she has focused her energies on the things that work for her. And one of our great facilitators was saying, well, I feel like she's everywhere. That's because Lisa has found that intersection of where her ideal customer and where she is and wants to be, and it comes together making the customer feel really special and more likely to buy. Oh, and the last thing, enlist help as you need it. So I am around if you ever want to ask me questions, but there are plenty of fabulous marketing and advertising firms here in St. Louis that you can reach out to build a partnership to execute against your goals.
Well, thank you, Brahman, for the great information and strategy. And at this time, I would like to open up the program for any questions for Brahman or Lisa. And so, Kim, if you would instruct the viewers on how they can ask a question.
Of course. So yes, at this time, we're open for some Q&A. So you are welcome again to pose any questions you might have directly in the webinar tool, and I will get those to our presenters. Looks like the first question we have is, excuse me, for Lisa. The question is, Lisa, why did you choose handbags as your focus, and how long did it take to get rolling?
Okay, so I'm sure as many people start a business, various reasons. For me, it was just related to what I needed at the time. So just solving a problem that I had because I was in corporate finance. I did a lot, I traveled a lot, and I couldn't find a bag to keep it all together for me. And so one thing led to another. I went through this, I guess you can call it R&D or research, but really it was just more exploratory for the first year, where I was just kind of trying to figure out how do I make a bag myself. But during that process, I decided this was something that many women had, a problem many women had, and I wanted to solve it. And so I went ahead and decided to leave my job. I remember my boss clearly at that time gave me a question and was like, what are you planning on doing? Because I gave him my 2 weeks, and he was like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm going to start my own business. He's like, what are you going to do? What are you starting? I'm like, handbags. And he's like, do you know how to make it? I said, absolutely not. And that's kind of the start to this journey. And post that first year of exploratory, then we ramped up pretty fast. So it's officially since Open Door, it's been about 2 years, 2.5 years now. And so we were able to accomplish quite a bit during that time frame, which I'm very, very grateful for. And a lot of it was just trial, locate your data, test it, and then come to conclusions, and ultimately focus your energy, because as small business owners, time is our most highest leveraged thing that we can have. So that's kind of a little bit of a background there.
All right, thank you for that, Lisa.
Welcome.
All right, next question is for Bronwyn. So Bronwyn, where do you think you get best results for sales in the shortest amount of time, for instance, just for the holiday season?
So that's a good question. I think best practice-wise, Instagram is probably the most shoppable. But, I will caveat that with the reason why I think that is because of who I am as a consumer, where I spend my time, and my preference for the types of content on that platform. So to Lisa's point, her answer might be LinkedIn is the fastest path to purchase, even during the holiday season. So it's going to depend on where your customers are and what their preferences are. Regardless, you will have the most success if you have a call to action on the post that clearly states you want the people seeing the advertisement or the piece of content to buy from you. So in terms of shortening that length, if I see an ad that says buy now, it's going to be a lot faster of a movement for me as a consumer to go from ad to purchase than if it says, let's say, learn more or sign up or something along those lines. So 2 tips, call to action and be where your customers are.
Great, thank you. Another question for you, Lisa. How often do you tweet or post on Facebook, and what content or message is included in those tweets or posts?
Yeah, so kind of going back to, go where your customers are. I definitely had a Twitter account set up for LuxNX, and what I found was it's not the most effective channel for us. And so I would say tweet hardly ever. Facebook posts, as of late, we're working on this like huge rebranding effort. So we've somewhat, I know it's contradictory to the fact that it's coming up for the holiday season, but one thing that I really took away this year, and we've like scrambled in the beginning because of COVID, but then the silver lining to this whole thing is it really allowed us to have more time on working on rebranding and actually making sure that we're more consistent across the board in our channels. So I would say part of it is, if you don't even know where to start, is just start with the most basic thing, which is how do you want to show up? What is your brand guide? In terms of like, those are things that, seem very trivial, but at the same time, very important, because at the end of the day, you want to look consistent across all the different channels. So from a posting standpoint, we've slowed down recently because we want to ramp up, but you can't, I like to use the analogy of a leaky bucket. So if you have a leaky bucket already, fix it first before you start throwing more water in it. So we're in that, hey, let's fix this leak. What we have right now is a leaky bucket and start throwing more money at it. But in terms of what we're doing with like Facebook ads and stuff like that, right now we're in like heavy testing and trial period for us to drive more traffic to the website. So that's where my focus is at the current moment. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I have a question for Bronwyn related to what Lisa just said. Is it sheer numbers for social media to work and to be, or is it the upward trend of that, of people coming to or posting or downloading? What is it should you measure?
Great question. So I think it depends on 2 things: where you are in your marketing journey, and what your goals are. So if you're just getting started and you're trying to figure out what works for you, taking it off in small bites and looking at trends over time in order to figure out where to best invest your time, that's most important. Figure out what works first and go from there. Once you have a baseline of what's kind of working for you, then you can start trying to grow that number. So if you know between a video post on Facebook or a text post on Facebook, text is always doing better for you, then you can invest your time in text and shoot for the goal of getting more impressions to then grow the awareness of your brand. But let's say your goal is to convert a sale quickly for the holidays, then maybe it's the clicks of to your website on that text post. So kind of a complicated answer, and I'm not intending to be complicated. There are a lot of different levers you can pull. The trick of my industry is it's actually just very intuitive, kind of at the end of the day. It's about setting little goals that you can accomplish, lining the things up based off of what your needs are, and just taking it a little bit at a time. So.
Okay, great. And Lisa, you talked about non-paid endorsements, and what was your success rate for the non-paid endorsement? You were able to get the Housewife, New York, and how successful are you at getting that? Is that easy to do?
It's very, very tough to do. But here's the thing. One thing that I learned during this process is it's not even about the volume. It's just about it is about, take a step back. It's about the volume of how many people you reach out to, yes. But at the end of the day, if you reach out to like 100 influencers and only one person got back to you, but that one person is totally worth it, it's really, it's pretty great. You can then utilize that information and use it towards like your paid campaigns, whatnot. Because what people don't realize is, like, let's say you get, like, we got into Forbes. That Forbes article didn't necessarily drive traffic, but the fact that we were in the Forbes article made our current followers more excited. And same with the Screen Actor Guild Award. Once the year passed, then it's like, hey, it gets our current followers excited, but it also is something where you're like, look, like, for example, if you're an actor, hey, I got a Golden Globes award, right? Like 10 years ago, but it's still something that you have with you as kind of a badge of honor that also validates your brand. So it's a ton of hard work for these like earned media. It is a lot of like, hey, sending like, hundreds of emails out there to publishers, which by the way, simple tip on that is just look for who's writing about your industry and find their emails. It's widely available, or a little bit of a hack trick, but you can guess their emails. So like if someone's at, I don't know, I'm just making something up, but let's say Condé Nast, or like, let's say Vogue, because I'm in the retail space, you can guess that person's email address by looking at what their common communication online method is, or someone else's email if they share that, and say like, it's Carla Jackson, but they do carla.j at firstbank.com, like, then you can guess someone else's email the same way. And so that's kind of a little bit of a hack. But yes, it requires a lot of hard work. It's not just a one and done. In fact, you'll probably get a lot of like silences before that one person will come back to you. But that one person is enough for you to just build up over time. It's really just building blocks. So it's like a house, but a house that takes a really long time to build up.
Well, the other question I have for Bronwyn, and I think we're waiting for other questions to come across, is that when should a business owner seek out help from an ad agency, and how big do they have to be, or to grow to, or how difficult does it have to be for their social media strategy to say, I need help?
Well, I think you can say, I need help at any time. If it feeds your soul to do so. The question is how much money you then want to invest in the help that you're getting. So that comes down to what your resources are, and if you can afford to allocate a certain percentage to getting the support. So that's a practical answer. A little bit more realistically, I think to Lisa's point about building a house that takes a really long time, if you're trying to do it yourself and you are just truly not seeing any return on the investment, and that's also lining up with not resulting in your business goals being accomplished, like you need new customers, you've been doing the social media thing and it is just not working, it is taking too long by whatever your own standards are, then it might be time to reach out. My suggestion would be then to find a range of vendors, because if you go with a contractor, sometimes you can get like a nice cheap hourly rate from those people that can help you out for a month, and then you can build off of that. Or you can go all the way to the point of hiring an expensive agency to make a bunch of creative for you and execute a media buying strategy and all sorts of stuff. So in theory, though, I will say anytime you invest with external help, you should be then seeing returns on that investment. So making sure that once you do decide to invest, that is also working for you. But yeah, I don't think that it's size-based or even revenue-based. I think it's about knowing what your limitations are and being in a spot where you can ask for help. And also asking friends and family for volunteer time too. That might be the best place to start, no matter where your budget is, just to say, you know what, I want to try this and I want someone who knows to do it. Just poking around and seeing if you can find someone that'll lend you their time.
That's great advice. Kim, are there any more questions?
Yes, looks like we have a question for Lisa. How did you pick your manufacturer, and how is shipping your product handled?
Okay. The manufacturer, going from the zero to hero story. So ignorance is bliss at times, I think. And when I first found the manufacturer, I literally created my very own first prototype, thinking that I was able to create it. I learned how to sew and everything, and soon after realized I'm a terrible sewer. But that being said, my first prototype was made from like fabric and some cardboard boxes. I made it together just to explain the concept, because the compartments were very difficult to just kind of convey or tell someone to make. So once I had that, I went to a local seamstress, had her make a prototype, and then I used that prototype to go about and shop for a maker. So I looked in St. Louis, I looked in New York, I looked online and searched everything. I found some manufacturers and I shipped them off. Some were here, some were overseas. I just did a ton of different due diligence and comparison. And then I went to, ultimately I had this like quality standard that just was not met. I did like 40 different prototypes, and I was still just, hitting my head against the wall kind of feeling in terms of finding a manufacturer. So ultimately what happened was I saw there was an international trade fair in Hong Kong at that time. And this was probably months before I quit my job. So at that point in time, I decided, well, if I were to really give this a go, I need to leave my current post and also really dive into this. So I had a timeline, and I kind of backed into when I needed to quit. So I had a timeline where I wanted to go to that international trade fair to look for a manufacturer. So I went there, and I was able to. It's about, at the end of the day, it's about relationships. No matter what I do, whether it's setting up the business online or ultimately even finding a manufacturer, how it ended up happening was I had a conversation with one of the local vendors that was at the Hong Kong trade show. And she happens to be from a hometown that my parents were originally from. It's like a little fisherman's town. I never see people from that town venture out into like the international scene. So I went to them and I was like, hey, what are you doing here? And then, we kind of exchanged different stories. And she was like, oh, you're looking for a bag manufacturer. I was like, yeah. She's like, there's other people from, our hometown that knows other connections. And, and serendipitously, it was just kind of that. It's a very organic, authentic type of connection that ultimately led me to like, hey, here's, if you don't know, or if you need help on something, just kind of let people know that. I mean, I think that's going back to what Bronwyn's point was earlier, is sometimes if you need help, having a conversation with a marketing agency or a buyer, even if you don't end up utilizing them, at the end of the day, you still learn something during that process. And I have to admit, a lot of my knowledge came from that. And it's not to say that I didn't end up using any of them, but it's just to say, because I had those conversations, I knew where to put my money. I knew what was going to give me a return. And I also learned what are things that I have to just kind of hold in and keep in. So some of the communications that we have, I personally take those over, because having someone else do that is not really speaking the language of what the customer understands or can comprehend. So I'm probably going to hold on to that for a long time, because that's very, very near and dear to my heart. And you just kind of have to figure out, what do your customers want from you? Like, what are things that going back to like media buying, what Brown was saying. So I have a media buyer for the Facebook paid ads, but in terms of like what I want to show in those ads, those creatives, which is super important. It's not just about like, hey, having pretty pictures and sending them out into the world and hoping that people are going to buy based on those pictures. It is like, what do you want this person that's never heard about your brand, never heard about your company before, what do you want them to take away from your bit of information? And that is something that no one else can teach you but yourself. Unfortunately, you know your business inside and out. And even if you were to try to communicate that to a third party who you're trying to hire to help you, you won't be able to convey every single aspect without spending a ton of time with that person. So first and foremost, know what is super important to you so you can focus. I feel like that's a key thing today. Focus your energy on that and know what you can't give up. But at the same time, like for certain things that someone else could do it better than you, that's where you can spend your money on, and that's where you get a good return. And so you only learn that by having conversations with people at the end of the day. So I would definitely recommend having those conversations and just learning from it, especially in the beginning.
All right, thank you. Looks like we have another question for Bronwyn. What is the best type of paid advertising?
Oh gosh, I might need a little more context on that. So I can think of it within units, like what ad units might work best, or I can think of it on different platforms, or if we are thinking about all of the amazing things Lisa does, like from social to investing in an influencer. So I'll just start answering from a strategic level, and if the asker wants to provide, if I'm not hitting it, just let me know. Well, actually, I'll start from a unit level. Video tends to perform the best, but the quality of the content does end up mattering. We specifically find within Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter that native video, as in you upload the video file into the actual platform, is always a top performer, because each of those platforms wants to keep people inside of the platform, so they tend to do better than, let's say, if you were to upload maybe a YouTube link. That's kind of a general best practice on what type of units to invest your money in. But if your video is messy and grainy and just doesn't communicate the quality that you as a brand are going to bring to your consumer, then it can end up doing more harm than good. Is that an answer? I can keep going.
That's your follow-up question, so I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more questions, Kim?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Well, I want to say a big thank you to Lisa and to Bronwyn. Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate the insights and the advice that you have given us. And one of the things we want to make sure of is that we're bringing quality information, and we hope everyone's found this information valuable. When you do exit the webinar today, there will be a short survey. So please take a moment and fill out that survey so we continue bringing topics and information that is pertinent to your needs and can serve what you are looking for your business. For the First Bank webinar series, we're going to hold this quarterly. And so our next webinar will be in January. And the webinar will be titled The Future of Work in 2021. So watch out for some news on that coming out a little bit later for the time and date, but put it on your calendar. It's coming in January. And this webinar will be able to be found on our First Bank's website, and that's going to be www.first.bank, and it will be under the section called the Family Business Resource Center. So Everyone go online, take a look, tell your friends and family and colleagues about this site and about this webinar. We appreciate everyone joining us today, and I want to wish you a very great and wonderful afternoon. Thank you, Lisa and Brahman, and thank you again.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.